today. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, the audience. My name is Eva Kellershof. I'm VP of Sales for NETSOL for North America and also Europe. And today I headed over to a podcast studio from the International Women's Day Luncheon. So I guess I'm granted a wish today. So I invited one of my favorite guests here. He's actually a very renowned figure in British asset finance and beyond. So allow me to quickly introduce himself. Hello, Roger.
Hello. Very pleased to see you here.
Yes, very good. So this is Roger Skinner. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Banking and Financial Services, SMF1 approved by the FCA. He held C-level positions within global financial institutions covering corporate, retail, and asset finance in the UK and internationally. Chaired numerous board and committees as CEO and board director for Maxia, GMAC, and Lombard. And he also undertook a number of M&A teams on the buy and sell side. You led and built high-performing leadership teams, and you are a board advisor and investor.
Good Lord.
Exactly.
I sound exhausted already.
So it's the reason why it's an absolute privilege and an honor to have you here is because I think, there's really a person that went through, not only personally, but also professionally through lots of ups and downs in their careers. And I think these leadership questions and lessons are something worth digging into. So I really appreciate you being here. So let's maybe start at the very beginning. If you remember back even your childhood days, I think there was some events around there that really geared you towards developing resilience and grit.
Yeah, well, so the childhood time, a little bit of a very significant moment would have been the death of my mother at 6. So that's where you don't realize at that time the impact or the effect at all. You probably don't realize that until much, much later in life. But when I look back, I realize the impact it had on me as an individual, the sort of subconscious work. So yeah, that would have been a profound moment, probably uncovered when I was doing a bit of psychological development in NatWest as part of a CEO development structure where they strip you back to the bone. And it was when they strip you back that I realized that was the profound moment in my life. So yeah, very interesting and sort of created the environment for me for the future because I learned to be independent and that the world wasn't going to give me anything. I needed to do what I needed to do to get wherever I was going to get to. That was it.
Exactly. So I think in your career, when it's all about strategic leadership, entrepreneurship, best outcomes, you often talk also about a safety net that you want to provide either for yourself, for your employees. I think it has a lot to do with, this type of risk management approach that also is very necessary in asset finance. Maybe give us a little bit more of a flavor around what you want to elaborate about that.
Yeah, well, the safety net piece was, and again, I don't want to be going a little bit back, but very, very quickly, the 1960s, no safety net in UK social services. In fact, as my father was a single parent then, had running a business, I think they eventually they sort of merged people into latchkey kids. We weren't quite that, but we were being chased by social services to have foster parents and not be brought up by a single parent male, because that wasn't really acceptable in the 60s. So safety net. So I was always thinking, well, I need to create my own environment, my own place where there is no dependency. And I have to look all the time to manage the risk. I was looking at risk very early on. We were not going to get snared and be put into foster homes. So I know that sounds a bit strange when you bring it into business. You didn't realize you were doing this. As I say, I didn't realize that was in my mind until it was teased out of me when I was about 30 years of age. And then I thought, wow, okay, that's why I am like I am.
Yes, obviously. I mean, when you want to go into some of the key learnings from really the course of your career, there's one particular quote you gave me in preparing for this podcast today, which I want to read out now, which is, "The human race is fragile. Every one of us lives for a finite period of time. I'm not including those that believe in the afterlife. That's a philosophy for another time. But collectively, we build institutions and organizations with the expectation that they may actually survive forever or at least outlast the founders." Now, you say the evidence suggests otherwise. Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Oh, that's quite deep.
It is.
Elaborate. Yeah. Well, I think the sort of academic piece would tell you that um, from the businesses, if you're taking S&P 500 companies, years ago they would survive 50, 60 years on average. Now they're lasting 18 years. And I suspect the acceleration is going on, and they'll probably only last 10 years. So it is there's a relationship in a sense between human frailty and lifespan and organizational frailty and lifespan. Obviously, we expect the humans to live slightly longer than some organizations now, but there is a requirement. I think there's a requirement on everyone, or all of us, just to accept change, work with change. You've just got to. Some of those businesses that think they can still survive and exist as they are today will be in a pretty rude place probably. And I would have said 10 years' time, 3 years ago. I might say 5 years now, because AI technologies are just having a profound effect on every business, every activity. And so I think you have just got to really not just embrace the future. You have to be part of the future, I think, if you're going to survive. Um, and I'm not sure that everyone's quite grasping that nettle at the moment. I'm not sure many people think that you can maintain the status quo. Don't think that's going to be possible. It's not possible.
Yeah, you talk a lot about like intercepting the future, means like you're really thinking ahead, thinking strategically. Obviously, another leader that I met recently said, well, particularly not in asset finance and auto finance, we're probably going to see a reduction of potentially 70% of, the resources that work on those ends just because of AI. Is there any opinion that you would share? I think there's a lot of automation potentially possible, wouldn't there be?
Yeah, I have to say, I'm no expert. I'm learning every day, and that is one of the real fascinations of intercepting the future. We are where we are, but you see what's coming. Um, so I don't think I could predict about what it would all look like, but there's undoubtedly a massive change. I mean, I've seen the change in 2 years in the use of AI technologies. I would use ChatGPT, Gemini Pro, Perplexity, and Anthropic, not being fancy, just I've signed up for them all. I learned from them all, and I see how much they've changed in the last 18 months. Their capability and capacity is just incredible. If you can harness that and put that into a business in a productive way, I'm not one who thinks that it should be to the detriment of employees. I don't think it should. I think we should be able to do it in a way that enhances people's working lives. I think I saw something recently, might have been Jamie Dimon or someone on Bloomberg, saying, that we could actually achieve greater productivity with people working 4 days a week. That's the sort of thing that might be much more appealing. And that might be the reason for the use of technology. So I'm not one that thinks that we should try and think that the technology is going to, people talk about destroying jobs. I don't think it, I think it'll change the shape of the way people work, and it should. Actually, you and I spoke about using a dictaphone.
Yeah.
And I said, but I'm now the secretary, so I don't have if I was to go back when I first started, I would, dictate in a dictaphone. I don't do any of that anymore. I'm actually the secretary, but actually the power of using the whole thing just means that it's not a chore. It's how it is. So I think there'll be a massive change over the next 5 years. But I think most of it will be very productive. It'll be very good for the human race. But we do have to make sure that we do it properly. And that's a bit that I'm focused on with some of the people I'm now working with, is that when we make change, which is inevitable in an organization, that change is going to be done with really good thinking, rigorous work, great analysis, and not just flicking a switch and thinking that you've done it. There's a lot of danger. There's a lot of hidden dangers in the whole thing. So I just think, I'm pretty enthused by it all.
Mhm.
I would say it's a real great future to come, and I'm linking up with people who are half my age, less than half my age. They're incredibly smart, and they're embracing this every day. So I'm learning from them.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm also happening to be working for one of the leaders who calls themselves not CEO, but CDO, Chief Disruption Officer.
Ah,
I think that's probably the most needed these times, right? To really embrace change for your organization, to embrace AI for every employee, particularly working in tech, right?
yeah.
So from your experience, when we just go deeper a little bit more into venturing into core banking replacement, core banking systems replacement, these types of things. Where do you see a particular angle, whether it's on automation, or what would you generally advise your fellow peers?
I'm probably not the best one for advice, but I'll tell you what I think it should go.
Yes.
Which is you've touched on something which I look at, which is the hidden cost of existing technologies, and as a consequence, the level of financial resource available to replace core systems platforms. There's costing a lot of money just to maintain what you have to run on legacy systems. But with the advent of AI technologies, if you do it properly, you can use your legacy systems, still build on them, and actually get an amazing difference in terms of customer outcomes, productivity, and employee satisfaction. But you have to go through the right process, a rigorous process of review. So don't just assume that you can just change what you've got. Analyzing your processes and your current system. You cannot do the work. You have to do the discovery work and the exploration before you can implement what you want to implement. And I have a feeling that some people may just go too fast, too quickly. And then, as I would refer to in something I've written before, you end up in technical quicksand because it's just not a stable foundation on which to build. So you have to build a stable foundation. And I think I mentioned in something, people won't remember him, but some people my age will, which is John Harvey Jones, who used to be chief executive of ICI. And he wrote a very good thing, which was a little bit more time spent in thinking and planning that measurably improves the results. And that's exactly the case with the deployment of AI in your business, in looking at your software and hardware systems. You've got to get into the detail. And I think a lot of people think they can do it really quickly. I think you've got to do all the planning, and then you can implement and execute quickly. That's different. But don't miss out the first stage.
I think we are in violent agreement on that.
Oh.
Because that is also what we at NETSOL prefer to do. Really have a deep exploration and discovery phase at the very beginning, and then obviously take an approach to tech, which has changed. Increasingly over the time, because we went also from building legacy systems into these more modular pieces where you go like, okay, first I have to replace this core bit in order to be more agile, to get the right outcomes out of it, and then bit by bit, change the whole platform so you no longer accumulate tech debt over the time because you constantly update and upgrade these partial systems, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and doing a review of all your existing processes. Some you may just need to change the way you do things without any other change of technology.
Mhm.
Just that over time, you've got legacy bad process. I
Yep.
mean, that just has to be removed as well. But that's an analytical process in its own right. And then you've got automation without using AI technologies. And then you'll move into an accelerated development that says this can completely change the way we do X or Y. But you have to go through each of those phases. Uh,
So we currently see a lot of opportunity in the combination between, a very powerful tech platform that allows for a lot of automation, but at the same time, sprinkle in some business process outsourcing. On that notion, I remember, with Maxia, you've been using VLS, which is a servicing company that is also part of the NETSOL group. And I think maybe there, if you want to shine a light on, keep focus on your strengths of the business and don't dabble into stuff that might not be in the core, or that you could better and more professionally outsource to somebody else.
Well, there was a couple of things with the VLS. Firstly, we had a very clear strategy when we started Maxia, which is we were building a finance company. Uh, Day one, we were also, which was primarily wholesale funding because we wanted to fund some fairly large tranches of funds without too much sales effort. So we could buy people's other portfolios and buy them in. We had at this stage access to capital that was very cost effective. That just happened to be our Australian parent at the time, joint venture partner, I should say, at the time. So we had that. We also were doing some things on the origination side, where we would acquire where the strength had moved in the asset finance business. The strength of originations had moved to brokers. The one thing we came across, because we started in February 2013, had Maxia Finance established within 3 or 4 months. We actually didn't think it was going to be such a challenge, but one of the first challenges we had was, despite that we had an ASX quoted joint venture partner with $1 billion balance sheet, no UK bank would give us a direct debit arrangement unless they took my wife hostage, or I wrote a check out for about 10 million or something.
Mhm.
It's quite ridiculous. So anyway, and we also wanted to have a really strong system for managing everything, that all the lease contracts and everything we were writing. So we did test the market, and yeah, VLS was just outstanding. And to be honest, we used them again since. So I went with Maxia. And at that stage they did everything for us from start to finish. So pretty well complete outsourcing, collected all the receivables, and we were very fortunate. We had very little default, but if we had any default, they did the collections as well. So it was a full end-to-end model for us. We had a couple of people obviously interfacing and running it, but there was a good team who really understood the market at VLS and did a great job for us. And I've used it again in the last 2 years on an MBO with Anglo Scottish,
Mhm.
where we built a hybrid lender broker model, um, replaying a similar trick to the one I played with Maxia, but slightly different in that we're not doing wholesale funding. We're doing a slightly different funding structure. But uh, with VLS, we could run our finance company, our in-house finance company at Anglo, without committing too much resource. We could just leave it to run alone, but clearly we don't. So, but yeah, very effective system.
Mhm. I mean, obviously, one of the key areas would be credit underwriting on your end, right? But on the other end, it's also having a very much in-depth knowledge about contract management and how it's run, how to approach customers, who could be, going sideways, who and really keep that non-performing loan quote really, really low. and prevent default rates. I mean, particularly in this environment, and that's where I want to go to, is like one of the areas that you dug in when we prepped for this podcast was not only technical quicksand, but really talking about the lessons from the great financial crisis and whether we're kind of like doomed to go that way again. So obviously having a servicer there who's really strong and committed to keeping default rates down. But on the other hand, like what about the underwriting that you're seeing right now? Is that something we should be very careful about?
Yeah, I'm actually less concerned in what I call a bit of the micro stuff, other than I'm a bit of a student of these things. So, if I was looking at US auto loans, I'd say they're not looking healthy, but everyone tells me that it's not systemic and it's all okay. Okay.
Well, subprime and deep
I'll wait and see on that. The good thing is a lot of the lenders in that market have got strong balance sheets and they've got lots of liquidity, which is not where they were in 2008. So that's probably not so bad, but I'll keep a watch on it. I don't know what Mr. Trump will do with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but that's another story. So credit, yeah, I mean, I think where I'm more concerned is what I've seen about some of the large frauds.
Tricolor,
Tricolor, yeah,
First
First
Brands.
Brands, MFS here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this tells me, without me going through the absolute detail, and we did have a similar issue here in the UK. Everyone will remember the asset finance fraud here in the UK. And I would a very very large one. I think people have lost the sort of, seems to me they may have lost the four C's of credit, which is my number one C, which always was when I was lending right to the early days, was character of the customer. That's your first. You should understand who you're lending to. Characters, is absolute. Everyone can borrow, and everyone can end up a little bit in trouble. But if the person in trouble is also prepared to work everything they can to get out of it, that's the character that you want to have. I don't think people are looking at the characters of the borrowers as being a critical thing. And then also you've got capacity, which is just the capacity to borrow and repay. That's just a basic. And then I've been interested in reading about collateral, of course, in First Brands and MFS, where the collateral is probably pledged not once, not twice, but 3 times. That's just a bit of basic work that you should never get yourself into. And then the obvious thing is cash flow. Liquidity is everything. Cash flow is current and future. And so if I was a CEO of a lending institution today, I'd be having a drill down on my portfolio. I'd be doing a complete portfolio analysis. I'd want someone to give me some red flags. Do we really know who the people were that we lend to? Have we really done our homework on it? So I'd spend a little bit of time. Maybe I'd use my little friend AI to do a piece of work for me on that with my credit team. That will be an important area for them to go in and have a look.
I think that closes the loop, because I think in the end, you also have to have a contract management system that allows you to ask exactly these questions. So you have to bring up all the important not only KPIs on the dashboards, but really review these probably on a daily, weekly basis.
Yeah, I'm. The dashboards are great. You need to drill underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good to you can look at delinquency rates and such like and say, well, it's 0.3% or 0.5% and look quite comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to drill underneath that sort of aggregated score. There'll be some horror stories which you don't know you've got. Sorry, but that's history tells me that's the case. So you need to go in and have a drill and then prepare for them. And that's all about making sure you've done the homework,
Mm-hmm.
and you're ahead of that curve. So yeah, and there's lots of tools available now. Many more tools that are available now than were available 5 or 10 years ago. So don't waste the time to do the work. I know everyone's chasing growth, but that's, I think, make sure your home is solid as well, will be my view.
So when you compare the sort of recommendations that you gave today to the person that you were at, let's say, age 30, how has that changed?
Oh, what, in the context of lending, or in the
Yeah, in context of lending, maybe also what you would give out to the students that are leaving university today. What are the key areas that they should, maybe avoid, and maybe other areas that they should probably double down on.
Well, I think I wouldn't lose the basics that I've just described.
The 4 Cs.
The 4 Cs.
Yes.
They're great
Looks like
foundation.
character would also be a great.
We're lending a lot nowadays, and we don't even know who we're lending to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's also a criteria in your personal life, probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just got to have, you need to be able to trust people. So, and if you're lending, trust is a big issue as well. So, for me, character's everything. And so, and when you're lending people money, that's a critical factor. So, I would say, in terms of, I don't think I've answered your question terribly well in terms of youngsters coming in versus, I mean, you have the wisdom of the old and the energy of youth, and I just think you need to be able to combine them both together. So to make a really successful business. So that would be, I think I would just probably say to them all, just respect some of the history. There's some wisdom here, because I've probably been through 5 financial crises, 2008 probably the largest, but I saw many others prior to that, different ones. And so just take some of the wisdom. And there is a couple of other things that that also makes me nervous, which is if everyone tells you that, or if you look at a business and its growth is accelerating, well beyond the rate it would be in a mature market, unless it's got something uniquely competitive about it, I'd probably be concerned. It's a start of a red flag for me, because how do you outpace the market, and why do you outpace the market at an accelerated pace unless you've got something really unique? I certainly came across that in GMAC. I remember sitting at the San Francisco conference, and I can't mention the guy's name because it wouldn't be fair. But anyway, the president of GMAC at the time. And I remember he was on stage, had all the return on equity figures and all the profitability figures up for all the businesses, one of which I was running the international division of X, and he was saying, well, this is how we're performing. So we were looking at a poor relation, you could say. And he said, now look at our mortgage business here. This is a license to print money. And I said to my CFO, who's next to me, that sounds like a complete failure to me. It's a disaster, isn't it? How can they be doing this? So I asked them the question, how can you be growing at 35% in a mature market? That wasn't a popular question. However, I saw Bear Stearns collapse in March the following year, and so I was tracking GMAC's balance sheet during 2006, 2007, and during the course of that year, I decided GMAC was in serious trouble. And
for liquidity reasons,
proven very right. But there we go. And we also then at that stage created our own escape route, which we almost pulled off. But unfortunately, the total GFC crisis just caught up with us at the wrong time. We were 2 months away from our safe harbor, as I called it, which was getting ourselves out of the GMAC structure and getting ourselves into a safe harbor with an A-rated European bank. But we didn't quite get there on time. That's life. But we were close. At least we had built a plan.
Yeah, at least. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have to be lucky as well, so it doesn't.
Yeah, and I'll have just sorry. and because I am a planner and a bit of a thinker and do a bit of contingency planning, there was one piece of contingency planning we could not do. So we thought we were going to escape GMAC and go to the safe harbor of an A-rated bank, European bank, top bank, and then we'd have the liquidity and we'd be really strong. With that not crystallizing into a deal, actually because of the collapse of Fortis Bank at the time, I had to get all of the MDs from all of the countries together and explain that actually this deal we were going to do wasn't going to happen. We found out over the weekend, so it was one of these weekend Monday morning crisis sessions. And I'll never forget our Italian MD turned around to me and said, "Roger, you must have a plan B." I said to him, "Luigi, there is no plan B in this world. Not this time. We are on our own. There is, liquidity now is our own game." So yeah, we fought our survival for 3 months until fortunately the US Treasury bailed GMAC out, and that helped
Or the TARP
us out.
program.
Yeah, and that bailed us out, but for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
So
interesting.
I'm not a banker by trade, but I know a couple of them. And the first things that you mentioned to me when we first met a couple of weeks ago was that you said, the two traits that you're looking at in a leader is empathy and humility. Can you maybe give us a bit of an explanation about that? Maybe an anecdote too?
Well, I think part of that, I referred to my session within NatWest, the program in NatWest, where, as I say, they stripped me down to the core, and it was a great session, great human psychology session, which we did for quite a while. It was a program for a couple of years, not a couple of weeks. And that made me study quite a bit about human interaction and human psychology. And I read and listened on quite a few things. And I think it's, humility and empathy were, dare I say, I probably hadn't realized from a sales perspective that my interest in listening in all of the businesses that I was lending to, with the people that own the business was part of the empathy process. So I would probe and ask questions all of the time. I was really interested in what they were telling me.
It's like what we would call KYC these days, right?
But for me, it was about learning and about lending and about looking at other opportunities. But people were very interested about talking about their businesses about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really important part. But what I found from a leadership perspective as well, and I guess I didn't realize that it was a combination of humility and empathy, but is that it's a leadership style that really goes well with people. So I had people within Lombard, within GMAC, that enjoyed that leadership style. So you could be quite, you can be assertive. There are many different leadership styles. Many are very successful. Many different ones. I don't think there's any one particular style, that's for sure. But for me, those two things probably are my more natural style, and with some people it works well, and that's why with some of those people they're still working for me today.
Yes, you mentioned that there are like 5 people that have been working with you for 25 years or so. How would they describe you?
Well, I'll come back to that maybe. I think I'm in a fortunate position where uh, I can pick the phone up to people that have worked with me and say, "I've got a project. Would you like to come and join me to do it?" And they seem enthused enough to come and do it, and excited by it. So I think as I say, I'm lucky to be able to have that little cadre of people, variety of different people, from anything from marketing, CFO, project. They're all different skills, which is very handy. In terms of how people describe me, I would say there's a really interesting description. I own a company called Vispa, which was a consultancy business I formed after the GFC. My personal consultancy still exists. So it's lasted 12 years. Whether it will last another 12, who knows? And when I was doing some brand work on that, because I was making this as a real business, and it still is a business today, I asked the brand marketing company, and there's a chap called Mike Symes. He's a great guy. I asked Mike. I said, Mike, because he asked me that question. He said, "How would you describe yourself?" I said, "Oh, Mike, I have no idea. Why don't you ask all the people that work for me?" And he did, which was quite fascinating. And then he presented it all back. And he said, the best description we came is that you're a tiger, but a female tiger. And I said to him, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah." He said they look after their cubs, unlike the male tiger.
Would just go out to hunt.
And yeah. So he said, yeah, he said that's the description. So if you looked on my website, Vispa, it has the claws, tiger's claws, and I sponsor the World Wildlife Fund for tigers. Some strange things emanated from this. I was fascinated by it. Yeah, that's so I don't know whether that's a good description.
It's a beautiful image, of course it is.
Well, I've got a tiger on my screensaver, obviously. So I thought that was really interesting for him to have asked those questions. I thought, I've no idea what to have expected. So that was probably the best definition. I'm sure Mike will remember, because he was also fascinated by it. It's not what he expected.
Now, as we wrap up this session, I want to know, you mentioned the story continues, right? There's still a lot ahead for Roger Skinner. You invested in an AI company, you said. There's also Formative that you're working with, a couple of other companies. What is on your mind for the next, let's say, 3 years? Because like in the AI era, you don't want to project out too much.
Yeah, so I've got some interests in they're not legacy businesses, they're growing businesses. So a couple of where I'm board advisor or non-exec director. And actually, as I'm here today, I'm just building a leasing division for an automotive business. So we've got a 90-day project from start to finish. So that's nothing to do with AI, but in Infinitive in particular, I'm very much looking to see and working with a team of data scientists, PhDs in large language learning, some very, very smart people. And we're having these conversations about the use of AI and how you deploy that successfully in a business, and going through some of the stages that we've discussed, which is about process review, automation, use of technologies. And these guys, I'm learning every day from them about, and they ask questions in meetings that are unusual, that are different. They ask you, like the anthropology of, well, guys, where are you coming from? And this is, and they say, well, I just need to understand exactly how you got from, or how someone got from where they are now to from where they started, and then I can start to map it. And this is a new world for me. So very exciting. Great future in terms of what we may do with it. And so for me, that's I'm fully energized, the same as I would have been when I was 30 years of age. Nothing's really changed. I'm just going to continue to harness the future, see what it looks like, and hopefully say, well, in 5 years' time, that's been a really great fun, and I've learned a lot from it. That's what I'm doing.
So that vibrating energy is really palpable, and it's really been a pleasure, Roger. So thank you so very much for having you on, and concluding this episode of our Biomini series for NETSOL. Thank you so very much, Roger.
It's been a privilege. I'm not really sure that anyone's learned anything, but who knows.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.